Yo, so Yeat just dropped the Riot and Set It Off music video just a few hours ago, so I thought I'd break down all the effects in this music video. There's a lot of cool ones in here, so let's just get right into it. And so the first effect that I want to show you guys how to do is this head explosion effect. And this can be done in two different ways. I'm assuming that they filmed two different shots where the old guy was sitting in the chair and then a shot of the background without the guy sitting in the chair. So I filmed a shot of me not sitting in the chair and then filmed a video of me just sitting here standing still looking at the camera. So like say if this was a moving clip, what we can do is we can just duplicate our layer wherever we want that head explosion to start. So say like right here. So I'm just going to go up here, grab my pen tool and then mask out the head area. Just get around it. You don't have to be like super accurate with it. And then as well, if you want to, you can get really accurate with the neck, but it's not really necessary. And now you just want to trim your work area. So I'm going to put the beginning right here and then the end to wherever the end of the clip is, so right there. And now we're going to invert this, so we're going to go to our mask right here, click invert, and we're going to use the content aware fill effect. So you're just going to come over here to the content aware fill tab and then just make sure you have range set to work area, and then you're going to click generate fill layer, and that's just going to analyze for a second. That might take a little bit, and then once we generate that content aware fill, we're going to get something that looks like this. And obviously this doesn't look very good, but once we have all the effects and everything added on there, it's going to look pretty decent. And we have like some shakes and all of the blood splatters and everything. It's going to look pretty good. And all of the assets that I'm using to do this effect right here are linked down in the description, and these are assets from Antonio NYC, and he did a tutorial on how to do this as well, so make sure to go check out that tutorial. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on the blood splatters and then like a flying eyeball. So I just dragged in this first asset here, and this is kind of the effect that does most of the heavy lifting right here. As you see, it spurts out from the neck and then it also splatters on the camera, which is super sick. So you know, I'm just chilling and already that doesn't look too bad. And as you can see from like the rough content aware fill, that blood is gonna cover it up. And then we have this little blood splatter we can just put anywhere on the screen as well, and that just goes really well with everything. You just want to make sure to really time this right. And then as well, I don't have any of this color graded yet, so I'd throw on a good color grade, a shake, and then also make sure to throw on RSMB, which is real smart motion blur, which just makes all of your effects look more realistic. And here's what that whole process looks like when I went and did all of that. And so that's kind of way number one of how I would approach this effect, and that's kind of like the easier way. The other way is you could mask out my body here if you want to make this look more realistic, and then use this footage as a clean plate so that we're not losing any background or anything, because in the original, as you can see, the background completely changes from the content aware fill. So this would just be like kind of the more professional way to do things, but for the sake of this tutorial, this way right here that I just showed you is great. All right, so for this next effect, this is like a little fade transition, and they're transitioning from one clip into another clip, and it's a really seamless transition. And so basically I just recreated that here with some basic b-roll with my desk here. Essentially, you just want a steady cam. You're gonna hold it as steady as you possibly can. Either do that or you want to use an actual gimbal. I highly recommend investing into a gimbal, especially if you're shooting your own music videos. And so basically it was just a slow pan from my computer past this right here, and then the second one, I just utilized this black space right here between my computer and my desk. And that's just like really perfect for this effect because it's completely black. So you can really blend those two together really well. And then slowly pan up to that picture of my dog right there. So I'm going to show you guys how I piece these two together. So essentially like right around here is where I'd want the transition to start. And then I'd want it to go from like around this spot over to here. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim these down a little bit. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start masking out this speaker right here so that everything to the right of this speaker is going to be blacked out, and then I can just smoothly transition into the next clip. And I'm just going to keyframe the mask path right here and then track this throughout. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to keyframe this clip to then come in on the left of that speaker. And then for that second scene to come in really smooth, like you just want to make sure to ease your keyframes and then smooth out your graph in the graph editor. And overall it's looking like this. So the next thing I want to talk about is how color grading can really change the vibe of your music video. And you can turn your scenes from looking like this into looking like something like this right here, just with utilizing some basic color correction and one or two effects. Yo, real quick, just make sure to go fondle that subscribe button and caress that little like button down there. They really appreciate it. And I really appreciate it. And so what I'm going to do to put the fire behind here, I'm just going to add in some fire assets from Action VFX, and then I'm going to add on some Lumetri color for the color grade. Pretty magical. So I'm just going to increase the contrast, decrease the shadows, decrease the highlights, increase the temperature. And that was within like 7 seconds of color grading, right? So, you know, you can really change the vibe like instantly. And so now what you want to do is you just want to clean up this color grade, and then once I mask myself out, what I'm going to do is just put some fire behind me, and then make sure to add on some deep glows or use perfect glow. That's a really good free asset that I'll have linked down in the description as well. It has tons of parameters for when it comes to color grading fire. And now the next thing that I'm going to do that just really makes this all come together is I'm going to add on a heat wave effect, and this was used in the Yeat Riot Set It Off music video. And once you add that on, you see you get some really good natural blur. So when I turn the blur amount all the way down to 0, you see that blur goes away, and then the fire doesn't look realistic. But if you turn that up, you can turn that up anywhere from, I'd say, like 10 to 100. And if you turn it up all the way, that just simulates more heat. And then finally, the main sauce is heat intensity. So as you see here, as I crank that up, that's just going to add those really realistic warped waves. And this just really simulates the heat and makes it feel more realistic. And then of course, you can't forget to add in some smoke assets, so don't forget to do that. And now for this last effect, what we're going to break down is the fire and explosion assets that they were using in this video. Now, some of this was filmed practically, some of this was real fire and real explosions, but you could kind of see in some of them that they were kind of obviously fake. But they did a really good job of comping it all in and making it look good. So this is kind of just a quick example that I'm going to show you guys how to do real quick. So I have this B-roll right here of this car right here, and basically what I'm going to do is mask this out with a rotoscope. You can do that with a rotoscope, or you can use the pen tool up here and track it. And then I'm just going to 3D track the explosion to it. And then I'm going to add on that really nice fiery color grade that we just went over, and that's just going to bring everything together. And something that's really important that you need to keep in mind when you're compositing is you need to match the contrast, blacks, whites, shadows, everything together from the asset to the mask to the background, because essentially as a VFX artist, you're imagining that all of those layers are actually there in the environment. So you have to keep that in mind. Like you see the black point in this color grade is kind of bluish, and it's also really toned down, so it's almost like a blacker than black. So then if I have any black values in my fire asset or my explosion asset, I have to make sure to match those two together, and then make sure everything is just one coherent piece of footage. And so because the camera was moving around that fire in the music video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to track this explosion in here. So before I do any compositing or color correction on this explosion right here, what I'm going to do is just 3D camera track my scene. So I'm going to make this layer invisible for now, and then I'm going to click on the bottom layer and go to my tracker tab. Now, if you don't see the tracker tab, you can just go up to window and come down here where it says tracker, and it's really simple. You just click track camera, and then that's going to bring up your 3D camera tracker, and it's just going to take a second to analyze the entire scene. And so now we just want to pick a point that is a good reference for the computer to recognize. And actually I like this one right here, so I'll just click on that bad boy right there, and then I'll right click and then do create null and camera. Then you're just going to set the pick whip to the explosion, and then you're going to set that as a 3D layer, and then it's going to track. But for my case, I actually don't need to 3D track, so I'm just going to get rid of those because the anchor point is focusing on the car. That's the focal point of this clip, so I can just actually leave it how it is, leave it where it is, and it's going to track really great. And here's that compositing breakdown up on the screen. So just really focusing on getting all of those colors right for the background, for the car mask layer, and for the actual explosion asset, and just keeping in mind those basic compositing fundamentals, and your effect's going to look great. And coming up next week, I'm going to be doing a full in-depth tutorial on how to do these fire tracking scenes and how to make them look as realistic as possible within After Effects. So make sure to keep an eye out for that, and make sure to go check out my website. I sell a bunch of editing packs on there for you guys. It really helps support the channel. I appreciate you guys. That's going to do it for this one, and I hope you'll have a good one. Peace.